even commentating on one. I don't think he calls them. He just commentates on them in between periods and stuff. All I see is this big, huge slob of a man who actually beat a fan with the fan's own shoe. Yeah, climbed up into the stands when he played for Boston. That's so tacky. I mean, that is the lowest echelon of class you can display. And the NHL doesn't ask for much. You can knock brothers' teeth out in this sport and still maintain your class. But you can't go into the stands and go after a fan. Oh, Mike Milbury, douche of the century award. I'm sorry, but you earned it. Who else is dumb? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's so many. So fucking many. It's where their dumbness is. Let me tell you this. If you've got somebody running for public office, there are some categories they should excel at. Do they need to know advanced trigonometry? It doesn't hurt, but I'm not asking for that when I go to the voting booth. I'm asking you to know your geography. I'm not an expert on geography. I know my share. I'm asking you to know your American history. Very important. You don't have to know all of it, but you have to know most of it. You don't have to get years exactly right, but you have to get concepts exactly right. You got to know your Constitution and its amendments. Got to know those. You got to know that Africa is not a country. It really isn't. There are many countries in Africa. You should know that. If you're going to run for office, in the highest office in the land, or even at the top level in the Congress, whether it's a Senate or House of Representatives. Got to know your shit. Got to know your local shit if you're running local. Got to know your national shit if you're running national. What else should they know? So they got the geography, the American history. You got to know your world leaders, at least the important players. And it would help if you knew all of them, at least by name. Yeah, you probably should learn that. Sit down on the toilet. You know, you can do it in a week. Learn all the world leaders and their names and their basic political position. Wouldn't be too hard. You have to have a basic understanding of the economy, at least to my understanding, and I wasn't a math guy, but fucking understood global economics. And it was taught to me by a goddamn Greek professor who could barely speak English, so I had to work twice as hard. I had to interpret and then learn instead of just learn. Fucker. Yeah, this one's for you, George Estos. Fuck you. I worked for that A. I worked my balls off that summer, you fucker. Learn some English, bitch. I said it. Goddamn English major having to speak Greek to learn economics. Get the fuck out of here. You know, people are retarded.
Bajank.
Although that wasn't really an example. Yeah, bajank. Bajank. Oh, the big one for George. There it is.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
Down goes Frazier. God, I love that. Kevin, you have it all over Alex Jones. Who is Strope? Strope, is that Debbie Daly's son, I think? Yeah, I don't like Alex Jones because of what conspiracy theories are doing to the people of the world now. I wish he would just focus on the top ones that actually haven't been disproven, and I'd love him because you need light on those. But he wherever he finds a seed of panic, he plants it because that's how he keeps people listening. But that's just me. Yeah, I mean, he had to get under my skin for me to do 8 full episodes on this show against him, and I did. I did 8 in a row on critical thinking and how to break yourself away from the paranoid type of teaching that he does and the dependence he has upon your reaction in a paranoid way in order to keep his program running. And I don't know. I just wish people don't fall. They're going to try to scare you this upcoming silly political season. They're going to try to scare you. It may not be national defense. It may be, who knows? Who knows? Maybe the threat of lone wolf terrorist attacks from the inside. They're going to use the Boston bombings to try to get you scared there and say somebody's not a hawk on defense or somebody's not spending enough on domestic issues. Or they're going to try to scare you with the Eboltard's going to get you. The ISIS is going to get you. The Eboltard with an ISIS is going to get you with a drone. All that. They're going to try to scare the living shit out of you. And I think they should be ashamed of themselves for that. But you know what? You can't really blame the politicians because the media is doing this. Why? Because it sells. Why? Because we're fucking weak. And if you get us scared, we're going to tune in to see how to avoid getting gobbled up by a sinkhole or have our skulls cracked in from a crane that's falling. I did a study. It was back in like 2010 on cranes, because they were, there were a couple of cranes that had collapsed in the city. So the media does what they do. They group. They try to group things to get you scared. So they went out and searched for all the other crane accidents that hadn't made news before. And when I studied the crane accidents from that year versus all the years before and after for, 10 years before and maybe 3 years after, no difference. Same amount of crane accidents happening every year. Had a couple happen in a populated area. Now the cranes are going to get you. I'll tell you what's going to get us. You want to know what's going to get us? Write this shit down. Climate change is going to cause a couple of problems. And I heard a new one today when I was listening to NPR. Okay. One is going to be the climate refugees. They're going to be moving away from the coast. So they're going to be flooding the inner cities. You got to handle them. Next, we're going to have water. Water is going to become an issue. Drinking water, agricultural water. Now, they're talking today on NPR about salination. I always called it salinization. Both words are correct, actually, but everybody's going for the shorter one now, so I'm going to sound out of place. But I've always called it desalinization. So we have a natural desalinization occurring because of the Arctic ice melt into the saltwater oceans, and that's fresh water in the ice. So that's taken the saline level down, the salt content. Well, if we start pulling water out of the ocean and taking the salt out of it, and then sending it back to the ocean through whatever runoff or, wastewater or whatever, then we're also taking that salt content down. And this affects current flow. And this affects everything. Ocean acidity, everything topples after that. So what we should do, and my idea was, take any salt we take out of the water here and go redeposit it up near the Arctic ice. I haven't researched this. I don't know if it would be viable or good, or even if we're going to be removing salt at the levels that would make a difference. But I think we will. Give us 10 or 15 years when desalination takes a less expensive turn and the technology gets better. Collect that salt, go deposit it at least back in the ocean, if not up by the Arctic Circle. And also, why not take some other salt from the world? I mean, you've got literally thousands of square miles of salt flats, some in Africa. I think there may be some also in Australia. Andrew could probably answer that for me. You could definitely scoop some of those up to try to counterbalance at least the effect on currents and acidity as the fresh water runs off quickly from these, from these glacial runoffs. So that'll harm sea life less, and just try to keep it balanced, keep that pH balance where it should be, and keep the acidity levels down. And because once the coral reefs go and the currents start slowing down, you're going to have all kinds of shit. Say nothing about crazy weather patterns. That's one idea I had. But what was the point of all that? I don't remember the point of all that. Why did I even get into that? Oh, anyway. You should probably trust really smart people in large groups when they're saying that climate change is an issue, that it is not on a natural cycle. I know for some of you guys, it doesn't line up with your politics. And I understand why you don't trust that maybe there isn't some new bogus industry emerging that's coming to get your money. But think of it this way. Let's say they're all wrong. Let's say I'm wrong. All right, climate change is not an issue. Turns out all the science was wrong. We're on a natural cycle. So what would have been the end effect? We would have ended up basically leaving fossil fuels and getting into green energy. So that's not a very bad punishment. I could live with that punishment for being wrong. We got to get away from fossil fuels. You know that. I know that. There is a huge campaign going against people like those coming up with 0-point energy theories and tests. They're testing it pretty big now. They're getting into the studies deeper and deeper, these independent scientists. And now, even if that's developed, you're still going to end up paying for the technology just like you would solar. But the renewal of it, frankly, I think solar's the way to go. Just think about it. I mean, what's more natural? You look at wind energy and you can see people having problems with the way these turbines spin. They create sound waves that affect people's biorhythms and shit, and they look terrible in the landscape. I mean, now they're doing underwater ones. There are a lot of forms of alternative energy, but what we should focus on is renewable. Renewable, renewable, renewable. I just said that 3 times fast without stuttering, and I definitely deserve a giant blowjob for that. So I'm going to send a message to my fiance here for that. The Day After Tomorrow, awesome motherfucking movie, man. I think that movie was, I don't know about the superstorms. I'm not going that far. But I would say that everything leading up to that, before the superstorms and that super duper cold air, everything before that is a fast forwarded version of what actual climate change is. They actually did a little research in that one, I think, because that's what I'm seeing come. That's what I think will happen. But as far as the superstorms and the supercells that come and these giant Arctic fucking hurricane-looking things, yeah, I don't know about all that. I think that would take longer. I think that would take literally hundreds of years for something like that to develop. And I'm just hoping, actually, since I don't think we can really trust ourselves, we keeping this planet safe. You can't even trust that we're going to put money into the budget to watch out for meteorites that could destroy this fucking ball that we live on. Let's get some people off the Earth. Let's get some colonies on Mars, which is going to happen. It's privately funded to be done by 2030. Let's get some people on the moon, get some bases there. Get some people on orbiting space stations. Get some people. They're already talking about settling asteroids. There are some very big ones out there that'd be just fine. Once you settle them and get your biodomes and stuff set up, this can all happen. And I don't think we should have all our eggs in one basket. I think that is a bad idea for humanity. And I think it's natural for our species, as we always have done, to spread out. Spread out. You've kind of lived up to your limits of your land. It's time to move on out. But this is for a different reason. I think Mother Earth can probably safely support about 12 billion people. I'm going off a study that a friend of mine who is named Mike, and he passed away in 2011. If you want to know about Mike, read my book called The Lost Dialogues of Table 18. You can Google it. He's so interesting that's my best-selling book, actually, and it's one of my shorter ones. That's how interesting he was. Everybody loved him. Short Irish dude. Only lived to 61 years old, but he probably lived 120 years in that 61 years because he was just always 100 miles an hour. He did a study when he was doing his dissertation, I think for his PhD, that basically tried to estimate how many people Mother Earth could support. Now, he's writing this back in 1980-ish. How many people could Mother Earth support with her current available production of food and availability of drinking water? And he came up with around 11 billion. And I read over his paper and I did a little research, and it seemed to match up pretty well with what I was reading. And I just did this as a side thing. It wasn't anything I had to do for school. And I think we should start looking real hard at what it's going to be like when we get to 11 or 12 billion, which should be roughly 2050 will be there. Because once the water wars start, if that happens, and I think unless desalination really gets cheap, it's going to start, then we've got a serious issue on our hands. You think we're going to be worried about oil? Fuck oil. Water is going to be the new gold. It is. And I don't know. I don't like people to be scared for no reasons, but if they want to be scared, if you need something to put in your fear spot, put something reasonable in there. Put something that's actually threatening us. Watch some videos on YouTube from respected geologists and psychiatrists and scientists about what really threatens the world. And don't trust what you're hearing from your news people, because they're trying to sell you fear. Go to the source, these scientists and these, psychologists and paleontologists and these, these geologists and these other scientists that actually know what threats are out there. NASA's a pretty fucking good source for knowing what should be watched out for and what shouldn't. Loaded with very intelligent people. It is a rite of passage that your IQ is like 150 or up to get into NASA. So they're not out there to screw you. They're not out there to steal your money. They are not being paid for by some secret organization that's trying to perpetuate climate change as an issue when it isn't. These are big deals, and we need to look at them. And can you imagine being one of the people who was in the top 100 most famous proponents of doing something about climate change 30 years after they've proven that it was a false science? Can you imagine having to live with that? These people don't want to take that chance. They've done their reading just like I have, and I put my name all over it. We got to watch out for this one, folks. It's going to get ugly. So that's my opinion. Right-wing nuts are very dangerous. Yes, right-wing nuts, but so are left-wing nuts and centrist nuts. If you don't have good data, then you don't have a good point. That's the way I look at it. Everything else is speculation. I heard the guy in North Carolina. No, what North Carolina was it? Was it North Carolina where they found the guy hanging, or was that Mississippi? I think it was Mississippi. For some reason, I thought it was North Carolina because they said Charlotte, but maybe it was Charlotte, Mississippi. I don't know. So this sheriff comes on the radio to talk, and I'm thinking, okay, this should be a pretty intelligent guy. This is what he sounded like, guys. He was like, I'm not deciding.